सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen though.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
I'm with Matin Bek, formerly with the Afghanistan government, a member of the Afghan government's negotiating team with the US over the Taliban, the peace process in Doha, which collapsed last year, leading to the Afghans or to the Taliban coming into Kabul on the 15th of August last year. Mr. Bek is now in the US at Georgetown University. In Afghanistan, he was also the deputy head for domestic intelligence, a very sensitive post. So basically, he ran intelligence with the rest of his team, and a former student of Jawaharlal Nehru University in India. And Ayesha, Siddiqa, very well-known Pakistani scholar, an expert on the Pakistani military. Her book on Pakistan's military, Military Inc. is very well known. It's come out in several editions. Ms. Siddiqa is now a senior fellow at the Department of War Studies at King's College in London. And today we are talking about the US missile strike in Kabul over the weekend, which took out the senior-most Al-Qaeda leader, Al-Zawahiri. So Ms. Siddiqa and Mr. Bek, welcome to the Print Debates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm joining the time zones, of course. Ms. Siddiqa is in London, like I said, and Mr. Matin Bek is in the US at Georgetown University. Mr. Bek, your first comments on this missile strike by the US. What does it mean for Afghanistan? How do you think that this happened? The strike took place in a part of town in Kabul, in the diplomatic area. How was somebody as senior as the Al-Qaeda leader, Mr. Zawahiri, how come he was found in that part of Kabul, in the middle of this big city?
Thank you, Jyoti. Honestly, it's not a surprise for me and for many Afghans. We have been warning international community, particularly United States, about the potential threat of Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan turning to a safe haven. But unfortunately, at different occasions, we were laughed at, ridiculed, and called being naive. But today, I'm happy that what the Afghans have been warning, that have been proof that the Taliban is an extension of Al-Qaeda, and the United States, unfortunately, with that Doha deal, surrendered Afghanistan indirectly to Al-Qaeda through Taliban. Mm-hmm. So it's not a surprise to me.
Okay. Dr. Ayesha Siddiqa, can I come to you and ask you the same question? How do you think this very senior Al-Qaeda leader, Al-Zawahiri, second only to Osama bin Laden, what was he doing in Kabul, do you think? And how was he taken out by the Americans?
Jyoti, I don't think that comes as a surprise at all. I mean, in fact, when Osama bin Laden was taken out back in 2011, the understanding then was that Zawahiri, his number two, would be somewhere in the AfPak region. So this didn't come as a surprise. And a bit of, a very slight disagreement with Mr. Matin is that I don't think it's not that Americans didn't know that Taliban are that bad. I think they were fishing for, I think what's important in this attack is that it's a signal to the Taliban. It's a signal, a very significant signal to the AfPak region, indeed, and South Asia, that Americans may be out of the region, but they're still operationally in there, and they can take out anything which is harmful for the security. Mm-hmm. I think they haven't revised, and they're not likely to revise their basic assessment, which was that they didn't want to take the burden of running every day-to-day affair security affair of Afghanistan. So they're out of the region. They're not going to return even with this attack. But surely there is a signal that anyone that this was a signal to the Taliban that they were in contravention of the Doha Agreement, that they will not harbor, aid, and abet terrorists. And in this case, Al-Qaeda. Zawahiri was found in Kabul, which means that he was under, protection of the Taliban.
You think
So
he was
that's
under,
important.
you believe that he was under the protection of the Taliban, Matin, Mr. Bek?
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe it was under protection of Taliban, and the house where he was sheltered, protected, it belonged to Chief of Staff of the Taliban's Interior Minister, Mr. Suraj Haqqani. And there are pictures. I've seen some of Haqqani members were in the same house. So it's a very well-known fact for Afghans who are involved in Afghanistan's affair. Yeah, it was absolutely under protection of Taliban. And it's very ridiculous the way now the Talibans are kind of contradicting each other, and they don't know how to react, rejecting that he was there and saying probably he could be there, we didn't know him. But that's somehow unfortunately the truth. He was under their protection.
But what's the second message, Ayesha? What's the first message you said is that the Americans are telling the world, and South Asia in particular, Afghanistan and the Taliban government in particular, that that you have violated the terms of the Doha Agreement, and that leader of the Al-Qaeda is sitting in Kabul under your benevolent gaze. But what's the other message? How does Al-Zawahiri get to Kabul when you have the Afpak region is being watched very closely, I'm sure, by by all the big powers? How does he get there?
I think this is a very typical way of hiding terrorists. I mean, look, the common thing between Bin Laden attack and Zawahiri attack is that they could finally, rummage, clear through and figure out that they were being kept in populated areas. I mean, who could have thought? I mean, I remember when 2011, when Osama bin Laden attack happened, nobody could even dream in Pakistan that they could keep bin Laden in a city, in a cantonment area, right under the noses. And, this was like unimaginable. The same thing happened with Zawahiri, completely unimaginable that he was kept there. And by the way, something which was not discovered and is not talked about, Mullah Omar was kept in Karachi for a very long time. So population, you hide these people who are targeted, who are potential targets, you hide them in populated areas. So in Kabul, they were there. So the intention, I mean, the idea is that you can hide them easily, and they were hidden.
But what does that mean, Ayesha? What I don't understand is if Mullah Omar was in Karachi, if Osama bin Laden was in Abbottabad, which is a stone's throw from the Pakistani military academy at Kabul, if Al-Zawahiri, the number 2 guy, is found in Kabul, then what does that mean to you? Do you think that it's the Pakistani military establishment as well as the Taliban who are sharing information? What does this mean?
I wouldn't look. These are areas where you can then think about it. But what's for sure is that these guys are critically still inside AFPAC region, which makes AFPAC still important for the Americans. The important thing is they're watching, and anyone who is considered a threat will then be taken out. So that is an important signal. Who is colluding with whom is totally, we can spin any stories, we can talk about it. It'll all be conjecture.
Right.
So I mean, I would want to stay away from that.
Okay.
But I think the important thing, so the important thing is America is still engaged. It's not going to fight Afghan wars, but it's still engaged as far as its own security is concerned.
Right. So, Matin, let me ask you the same question that I asked Ayesha, which is that if Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan, a stone's throw away in Abbottabad, a couple of hours away from Rawalpindi, if Mullah Omar was in Karachi, as Ayesha is saying, and we all know that, and now today, Al-Zawahiri has been found in Kabul. So, exactly the same question to you. How is it? What's going on? Are the Pakistani security establishment, are they hand in glove with the Taliban? How are these people just living all over Pakistan and Afghanistan?
Well, Jyoti, it's not a secret. And unfortunately, Pakistan, and particularly Ayesha and its military, played a very negative and destructive role in past 2 decades. They denied Afghan a prosperity. So no Afghans will forget and forgive that. And we are denied of a better future. That's because of the Pakistan's systematic support for terror. So today, what we see, Taliban are playing from the same playbook, what Ayesha was playing. Mm-hmm. So it shouldn't be any more a question. It shouldn't be any more a thing to discuss. It's very well known, and after the takeover of Kabul, it become more obvious. So I would everyone should know that, and I think everyone knows that. The fact anyone who's involved in Afghanistan, it's a public knowledge now what the Pakistani military did with Afghanistan and how they're slipping with the terrorism in the region. And that's not a secret. And we all know the connection of Haqqani with Ayesha. That's not a secret. Mm-hmm. And today, finding Zawahiri being protected by Haqqanis in the heart of Kabul, a kilometer away from the presidential palace and from the American embassy at the heart of Kabul. So it speaks for itself. It doesn't need to be analyzed. And that's the truth. And I want to add one more point to this. It would be naive to look at the Taliban as a counter-terror partnership or because the Taliban's owe their victory, if you call it a victory, but I see it more as a political thing because it was surrendered to the Taliban. And Taliban owes that to an extent, mm-hmm. To Al-Qaeda, to IMU, to ETIM, okay. Some of Pakistani terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. So to militarily win some part of the Afghanistan. So I would say they're all one group, a bigger. Taliban is a coalition of different regional and global terrorist organizations.
But they are in power in Kabul. We have to, that's a fact, Matin, that we must accept, and that's about a year old. In fact, the Taliban is going to celebrate its first anniversary in power in Kabul. But we are not asking that question. The question to you, Ayesha, is that this attack in Kabul, in the heart of the Wazir Akbar Khan area, which is a diplomatic area, very secure, as Matin just pointed out. But how does an American missile on a drone, an American drone, how does it reach there? I mean, if you look at the map of Afghanistan, it can only reach either from Iran or from Pakistan or Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. These are the 4 countries that share a border with Afghanistan. So how do you think it would have reached the heart of Kabul?
Well, Jyoti, they are your conjecture is as good as mine, and this will remain a secret. In fact,
who benefits from this?
Yeah. Wait, I mean, let me get to that.
Okay.
You see, American reports suggest that they probably took off from Kyrgyzstan, from a base there. There are different reports.
Okay.
The other possibility is, of course, use of Pakistani airspace. There are stories and stories. I think right now, for the sake of security, what Americans are doing is not revealing the possible course that the drone took? Which route did it take? Because potentially, if they're going to be, this is not going to be the end of the war on terror. There's going to be more Al-Qaeda leadership. There is ISIS leadership. There are others, there's Hebatullah, there are many other people that, there is Sirajuddin Haqqani
Okay.
as well. So anyone that Americans don't want to remain, and they will eventually have to target. So they don't want to compromise on that information. So your guess would be as good as mine that where did it possibly come from? Pakistan overflight, we've spoken about it. That's one possibility. Then the other thing is that, all right, Pakistan, then is it possible that Americans could have taken that risk of including Pakistan in this? And one had thought about it when Bin Laden happened, and the famous Seymour Hersh story, which was that actually there were top people in Pakistan's top army leadership and even Air Force who were perhaps would have been involved. I mean, that was the conjecture. It still remains. We don't know. I think what is more important and what is equally important is that for an effective drone attack also requires human intelligence. And in this particular case, they knew exactly how many people were in the building, who was where, the timing of him standing in the balcony. The drone must be loitering, but the drone must have been guided to the target through the help of human intelligence, which then raises question, who was involved? Who amongst the Taliban was involved? One is told that there was one particular NGO, American NGO or a local NGO, which was housed in the same building. Were they involved? That, in fact, if that was the case, in fact, I think even if it's not proven that they were involved, it does raise this issue that now the Taliban will be looking more critically and will be targeting any NGO, even if it's for poverty reduction, for women, for education. So that creates another challenge in itself that, that will be a problem. But if there is some support from the Taliban, then that is a very interesting story in itself.
Absolutely.
Who was ratting on who?
Yeah, absolutely. But, Matin, I think Ayesha reminded me of the Seymour Hersh story, which talked about the alleged Pakistani military establishment's connivance with the Americans. And we know the story about how the radars were lowered and allowing the Americans to come into Abbottabad and then bust the Osama bin Laden operation. So the argument being that the Americans could not have taken out Osama until the Pakistanis were involved. Would you say that something like that could have happened in the Al-Zawahiri case, which is that the drone took off through Pakistani airspace and then landed and took out Zawahiri from the heart of Kabul?
Well, Pakistan have always benefited from Afghan problems. So this could be one of the theory, one of the scenario, and I will not rule it out. And if you look, just a few days ago before this attack, General Bajwa reaching to Americans for financial help. And then this attack, there's no intelligence, but there's no background information I have, but then you could connect this, how a general could ask American for financial support. And when I read that news, I was kind of wondering, what is the logic here? What is the leverage of General Bajwa asking American to bail out Pakistan at this time? But then this incident happened.
So are you saying, Matin, that since General Bajwa asked for American support, now that the Pakistanis may have delivered Al-Zawahiri, they will get American support on the IMF question?
It could, it has a chance, because we cannot rule it out. That's how the Ayesha have played, unfortunately, since its inception. The double game, how to benefit, and there is master of that. So that's not a. I will not rule it out, and I will not.
Rule it in.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's important to just, remind your viewers and listeners that just to put it on record, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Pakistan, has categorically denied allowing overflight to American drone. So that also needs to be stated. That's the official position.
Absolutely.
I think, but as the discussion goes, I think it's important to realize that whoever is involved within the larger region, be it Central Asia or Pakistan in South Asia, if indeed drone has been used, even if overflight.
It was used. A drone was used, and the drone was carrying the Hellfire missile.
Yes.
So that we know. That's a fact.
No, but sorry. What I want to say is that if overflight has been allowed, or Pakistan has been complicit in any way, or any other country has been complicit in any way, there it kind of it adds to the risk, the risk for these countries in the region.
No, are you saying that if
itself,
Pakistan has allowed the drone to go through its airspace, it adds to the risk for Pakistan? How?
Well, it does, because look.
In fact, it benefits Pakistan. Wouldn't you say it benefits Pakistan?
Look, I think there isn't that clarity on where Pakistan wants to take its relations with the United States.
Okay.
You have a larger population. I mean, look at the popularity of Imran Khan, who's constantly talking against the United States, and he's talking about collusion between Pakistan and Washington. Surprisingly, in this case, he's not issued any statement about Zawahiri's killing or the possibility of America using Pakistani territory for overflight airspace. So he hasn't made any statement, but ultimately the sentiment that has been generated in Pakistan makes it politically a very unpopular option, and therefore a political risk.
What do you think, Matin? What do you think, Matin? Do you agree with this, with Ayesha's argument, or do you think that Pakistan benefits by allowing this drone through its airspace to reach Kabul?
Well, as I said earlier, I mean, Afghanistan has been always something for Pakistan to sell, monetizing on it. Of course, I would not say it's kind of a transactional. It's a transaction. Okay. Pakistan needs money, and we all know it's not their Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it's not the Prime Minister who make the decision, and of course Imran Khan has his own limit. He knows where to come and where not. But this should not be for three of us who live in this region in South Asia. We all know the truth. What is the truth? What is the Pakistan's ISI military's rule and double standard? Unfortunately, today, even in the larger context, no one even trusts them. And Pakistan is also an unreliable partner for the America also when it comes on the terrorism. But it plays maybe a launching ground. That's also more on a transactional basis. I would put it more on transactional basis. It's whenever it comes, the money involves, they do that, and it historically has been proven. So,
okay,
it's not a secret. That's what I'm trying.
But I think that I have another question to you, Matin, which is that some people are saying that it's not the Pakistani military establishment that would benefit from something like this, but it could be faction fighting inside the Taliban. I mean, it's well known that there are various factions, like there are in any government or any regime. So maybe one faction which does not like another, that could also benefit from the taking out or the removal of Al-Zawahiri from the scene.
No, I don't believe in that. And Al-Zawahiri, like Osama, pledged to Hibatullah, to all the leader of Taliban, from Mullah Omar, and Akhtar Mansour, and Hibatullah. Always, whenever a leader of Taliban died, a new one emerged, Al-Qaeda and Zawahiri have done the bayah to them. And second, the suicide bombing, if we call that a technology, a human technology in a war, was important in Afghanistan from Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has given that knowledge to the Taliban.
Mhm.
So as I've been telling, from day one, from the first version of Taliban in the 90s, that was Al-Qaeda's money. Second, post 9/11, it was Al-Qaeda's terrorism knowledge that Taliban's have benefited. So I rule out there's other way to hate each other than this. On the question of Zawahiri, I strongly believe Haqqani would not do this without knowledge of Hibatullah and Mullah Yaqub. At least these three among the Taliban knew very well about this Zawahiri's hideout. So it's not a question. And those who are pitching this idea, we knew who they are. They are the one who lobbied for Taliban. They are the one who helped this deal to be signed, and they have been always lobbying for Taliban to portray Taliban as a CT partner. So it's we should not be naive. We should see these messages are coming from who's talking about this.
Okay. Dr. Siddiqa,
Can I wait a minute, Jyoti, can I come back very quickly on this? You see, I can completely appreciate and understand and sympathize with Matin's anger with Pakistan.
right.
If I were an Afghan and suffering the way they have suffered, I'd be angry too. I mean, I'm not, and I don't want to sit here and justify what Islamabad did to Kabul.
Mhm.
That's not the issue. The point is, I think he is being a bit careless in one, understanding or explaining what a lot of people already know. It's not a secret that there are schisms within the Taliban establishment, so to speak. There is not one singular establishment.
Okay.
And this is where the problem arises. That while there is a Kandhari group on one hand, which is talking to India, which is talking to United States, then there is Sirajuddin Haqqani, who's closer to Pakistan. And in this case, I think the interesting point, and if you would allow the conversation to move beyond Pakistan's involvement or not Pakistan's involvement, if you're not
Next question.
dead, if you are not dead set on establishing that, let's move on. And I think the important fact here is that Sirajuddin Haqqani, this Zawahiri was housed in this place where he was living, which was owned by Sirajuddin Haqqani.
Mhm.
And Sirajuddin Haqqani's links with Pakistan are known.
Okay.
That's important. Now, there are two questions. And the interesting thing is that after Zawahiri was killed, his family, his wife, children, who had been released in 2019 by Pakistan and handed over, pushed out to Afghanistan by Pakistan. Now, these wife and children have been taken to a safe location by Sirajuddin Haqqani Network.
Mhm.
So the linkage then gets established. I mean, that is important. That linkage is established. Now, what does it mean? I think we should now be looking at two important questions, which I think are important questions.
Okay.
One is that there has to be the technology demands. I mean, yesterday, it was yesterday. We had this conversation. I mean, unfortunately, Christine Fair couldn't be in your program today because she's unwell, but she was there in a program yesterday. And one of the things she pointed out very clearly, and you can also confirm it from any American security analyst, that drone technology is very complex. It can target, it will effectively target, but it also needs human intelligence. That human intelligence has to be on the ground,
Right.
which raises the question, somebody from the Taliban, somebody from Kabul who was that close, who could do it, who was involved. So
I think you've made that point before as well.
Yeah.
That
So
the human intelligence on the
ground
ground would have helped taking out Al-Zawahiri.
the-
Martin, you had a point.
Yeah, the other question I think we need to ask
Ayesha,
is
can you,
that
if you
now,
could, just
very quickly, very briefly. I
Okay.
think what is important now to figure out, what will the Americans do? Because the Sirajuddin Haqqani network has gone against Doha Agreement and aided and abetted and kept a terrorist,
Right.
Al-Qaeda terrorist. What are the Americans going to do
So
now?
Right. So before we discuss next steps, Matin, you had a point to make?
Well, I'm kind of surprised. Of course, I've been deputy of India's. I've been part of many of this operation. One is cooperation of an entity, and then another one is exploitation of resources or source. Of course, I mean, US has been involved in Afghanistan in the past 20 years. I mean, it has nurtured sources among the Taliban, and it has human sources. That's the source, but that cannot be played as one faction of Taliban systematically playing against that. I absolutely reject that. That's not on the record. I will reject that. That's not true, and that's very naive. But human sources, it's a common thing, and of course, any intelligence service will use that. And the CIA had active presence in that region in the past 20 years, and if you look beyond and past 4 decades, so that's very normal. But I reject the idea of as a faction of Taliban helping Americans. No, because if you look at, then it's in the bigger picture, it's already alarming Taliban as an entity. So that could have been, if that was the case, there are other ways, other methods to help, not to humiliate themselves publicly.
So I have 2 questions. The first question is, what next? I mean, Dr. Siddiqa pointed out, what next? What happens next? The Americans have shown that they remain still very powerful, whether the drone flew through Pakistani airspace or from anywhere else. The fact is that the Americans have unleashed this drone in the heart of Kabul, and the first anniversary of the Taliban regime is coming up. So Matin, your thoughts on what happens next? How do you think this is going to unfold?
When Taliban took over, when Biden announced the withdrawal and saying ending forever war, he emphasized on over horizon CT operation. So we all were expecting one other way, some sort of drone attack, but not this high profile, probably some certain element of Al-Qaeda or others. It was expected. And it's nothing, as I said earlier, nothing a surprise, but the surprise is that the guy was found at the heart of Kabul. That's the only surprise. Now the next move, and I would say Zawahiri was already at the 70s, and he was a figurehead. He had been able to consolidate Al-Qaeda after Osama's death, because Al-Qaeda, you keep in mind, Al-Qaeda has a competitor, Daesh, ISIS, in the region and beyond. But still, Al-Qaeda being able to preserve a footprint in South Asia and beyond South Asia at this age was a very successful legacy of Zawahiri for what Zawahiri left. Now, this signifies, because as far as I know, or the reports I get from the ground, a different part of the country, unfortunately, there is a huge and big presence of a terrorist organization, either you call it TTP or ATIM, IMU, and other smaller terror organizations. ISK is different thing. That's a different question. And Al-Qaeda in subcontinent, all of this. So terrorists or all the terrorist organizations now have a free hand. And look now, TTP is roaming very freely in Afghanistan, in Kabul, under protection of Taliban. So again, I will emphasize, because Taliban's owe their victory or their success to these terrorist organizations. The moment Taliban start acting against them, it will collapse. So this is it was known to all those who were involved, those who had information or intelligence briefing. They knew this was happening, but now it became a public knowledge to the world. So we might see more incident, and the only thing would be here now, these targets or this terrorist figures, they won't be any more reckless or careless. Now they might take some sort of caution. So since this attack happened, what we're hearing from different provinces, from Kabul, a lot of Taliban's leadership that day or next had gone for kind of in hidden. They're not public anymore. And some of the foreign fighters in different parts of the country in corps, they had bases, they have left those bases, they've gone into secret places. So they're being more cautious.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is, this just made the thing public. What was hidden, it has become public.
Right.
So more and more incident, more and more, already we have witnessed there have been attacks against Uzbekistan.
Right.
There have been establishment of Tehrik-e-Taliban in Tajikistan in the north of Afghanistan. So new incidents are happening.
Right.
And also, I'm sure Ayesha and you know what's the negotiation between TTP and ISI. As far as I know, there are different factions among the TTP, but also that's not progressing as it's we see.
Okay.
So,
Dr. Siddiqa, your thoughts on what next? And also, if I'd like you to perhaps comment a little bit on the TTP, on the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, that terror outfit's relationship with the Afghans, because there has been talk about how the Afghans have brokered a ceasefire between the TTP and the Pakistani government.
See, I think, I don't see, an extension of the attacks.
Okay.
I think what the Americans would look at, people hiding away, I'm sure that's happened, but that hiding away is something very natural. It should happen. They would do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean a major shift. I mean, Sirajuddin Haqqani, there's money on his head, but we know, but he remains secure. The Americans intend to talk to the Taliban and wherever they can. They're not into the business. I don't think Americans are in the business of stabilizing Afghanistan. They're not even in the business of stabilizing the Taliban. What they're doing is, if you can run the country, don't harm my security, number one. Number two, if you harm my security, if you target my security or my interest, I'm going to come after you. And this one attack definitely is a reminder of American power. So the Osama bin Laden attack in 2011 wasn't a random freak planning. They've demonstrated yet again that they have an eye on the region. They can come back, take out whoever threatens them. So whoever takes over control of Al-Qaeda now, there is this moment of very slowly disempowering these terror outfits. Now, it's a signal to the Taliban that, look, you either mend your ways and be more sensible, But if you want to, if you can ensure that by kind of negotiating, by changing some of your methods, and you can demonstrate control, then fair enough. We're not kind of unhappy with it, or we're not going to come after you. So I don't see the threat increasing
Okay.
per se to the Taliban. But the other thing that it does is that it signals to other groups within, it increases schisms within the larger Taliban circuit. The other is that there are groups within Afghanistan who are ready to fight the Taliban. Now they will probably take heart from this attack and say, all right, we can also go and target the Taliban. So what I see is greater conflict emerging in Afghanistan, and as a result in Pakistan as well. I mean, I think either by taking out Zawahiri or by Zawahiri being there, Pakistan has not been a beneficiary. I mean, Pakistan has not been a beneficiary of its policy of supporting Taliban, period. Good
Okay.
Taliban, bad Taliban, it doesn't benefit. Very quickly, and you've noticed that what's been happening.
Right.
Pakistan has been negotiating with TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, using Afghan Taliban for that. The Afghan Taliban and TTP are one and same. They're not, you can't separate them. And Pakistan wants this negotiation to be there so that TTP do not attack Pakistan. But that is a threat which remains for Pakistan, and it will remain.
Right. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there, but I'd like to thank you both, Dr. Ayesha Siddiqa in London and Mr. Matin Bek in the US. Thank you so much for discussing this US missile strike in Kabul, which took out the senior-most Al-Qaeda leader, Al-Zawahiri. Thank you both so much for talking to me on the Print Debates.